think that there's a fundamental shift that has to take place in order for you to get to understand how to analyze the potential activities or initiatives that you might do under an ESG framework, and how that creates future value, right? So you have to have that shift first. You have to have the mindset shift first, and then once you have the mindset shift, you start just identifying and recognizing places to create greater value, right? But if you're still looking at this through a shareholder lens, the only thing you can possibly understand is trade-offs.
Welcome to Hiring Nowadays, a podcast about what makes and breaks successful hiring.
There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Calvin Sadao, CEO and co-founder at Awana, where we believe that lifetime talent has the power to unlock companies' potentials. Today, I'm excited, and I'm joined by Jeff Cherry, the head of Conscious Venture Labs and the Conscious Venture Fund. I was fortunate enough to join the cohort a few years back. I was part of cohort 6. And today we're going to be talking about ESG, environmental sustainable governance, and why it's important for companies, whether in regards of being successful and even retaining talent. So Jeff, I'm super excited to have you here today to discuss this really important topic for companies, whether you're a startup or a long-standing company. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Yes. Great to have you on this important podcast. Just for a little bit of everyone's context, Jeff was the catalyst for me thinking of ESG for our company. Before we definitely felt that conscious capitalism and being a conscious CEO was important, but really identifying those key goals that make us that consider our stakeholders was something that Jeff really brought to my attention. And so, Jeff, I'm curious why you looked at and started considering ESG as part of practice for companies to implement early on.
Well, I think, Calvin, there's a couple of different reasons, right? I mean, first of all, I think that if you're thinking about operating your business from a stakeholder perspective and having a broader, view on the purpose of business, other than just creating value for shareholders, but creating value for all of your stakeholders, employees, suppliers, communities, customers, that you also have to approach that in caring what those stakeholders care about. And I think that all of us are starting to care more about, not just what we can get, but what we can give and what we leave behind. So, how we take care of this, this one home that we have, that we share together, but also how we treat each other in everyday interactions. So that's sort of the S, the E and the S of ESG. And then from, the G, the governance standpoint, is just sort of how do you operate your business with a mindset that focuses on ethical behaviors and those sorts of issues. And I think that as a society, we're starting to care more about those things. So I think in order to be a successful business, you have to care about those things as well. So ESG, the frameworks around ESG is sort of one way to think about that. There's probably others as well. As you know, I used to run a hedge fund, and we, looked at a lot of ESG ratings agencies, and we came up with an additional, sort of acronym, 3 letters that we used when we were doing analysis then, what we call ESC, employees, suppliers, and customers. So how do you treat those employees, suppliers, and customers? But a lot of people will say that, depending on how you think about ESG, you can encompass all of those things in the ESG framework. So we think about one, we think it's the right thing to do. Right. We think that we should, the caring more about each other is just a better way to operate a business. But we also think that because society is moving that way, it's a more profitable way to operate a business. So we want to get companies focus on this idea that the winning businesses of the future are not going to be those that focus myopically on shareholders. They're going to understand how to create broader sets, broader paths to value. And that's one way. ESG frameworks are one way to think about it.
That's really valuable to consider. I mean, if you're not thinking about all those components, I mean, one argument would state like successful companies would do that. Why don't some companies think of some of these principles early on, or why do some of them? I think sorry to go around, but one of the cons I've seen oftentimes, and as a hedge fund, how do you weed out the companies that are just doing it for the PR purposes? Or do you still see companies doing ESG for PR still? Or is it that's kind of people are seeing right through it? And if you're not doing it for real, then it's just
Yeah.
people aren't going to.
It's a really good question. I mean, we used to say at the hedge fund, and I still think this today, how do you separate the pretenders from the contenders, right? The people who are really doing it and the people who are using it to sort of greenwash their image or those sorts of things. I think that, there's a lot of reasons. Look, we're on this podcast talking about ESG, but as you probably know, Calvin, we don't use that, that specific framework a lot in the venture space, mainly because we think that sometimes ESG and the stakeholder model get conflated. They're not the same thing, right? We think that stakeholder model is actually bigger. That, we always say that if you, no matter how you think about these acronyms or these that people use to describe business, if you're not operating from a stakeholder perspective, you're not likely to achieve those. So ESG would be a subset of what we do. But to answer your question, I think more directly, why don't why aren't more companies sort of focused on this or embracing it in the way that we think they should? I think that it's been politicized. There's no question about it, right? It has an environmental pedigree, and the whole discussion around the environment has been politicized in, I think, clearly unhealthy ways. So I think a lot of organizations are sort of, when they say that they are focused only on business and focused on returns, and therefore they are poo-pooing, if you will, the ESG, ESG analysis or ESG ideas. It's actually not true, because if it were true, if they were just looking at it, is this going to be beneficial to my business? It's really clear, right? So most of the times, those people who are pushing back on it are pushing back through a political lens and not through a strategic or tactical lens. They will disagree with that, but it's clear. It's very, very clear, because if you break it down, if I don't talk about quote unquote ESG as a thing, but if I talk about your customers and your investors and your communities care about whether or not you're polluting the rivers. Should you care about that? Everyone nods their head yes. And if I say, if you spend more time creating value for your employees, your suppliers, and your community, that they will actually spend more time creating more value for your organization. Is that something that you really want? Everyone nods their head yes, right? So I've already described environmental, social, right? And if I say, look, if you operate your business in a way where it's beyond reproach and all above board, and you don't have to worry about government coming in and trying to make you do things you don't want to do, that's probably a good thing for your business, right? Yeah. So that's all about governance. So if you talk about it, in those very basic strategic and tactical ways, everyone agrees. When you put a label on it, they say, no, I don't want to do that. Right? And then they tell you it's not political. Right.
It's value when you say it. I mean, and as you broke it down that simply, it definitely puts people in. You definitely see the separation happening. You see the politicization of it all, and I like how you say when you said that, what was it, the E in the environmental, ESC or the EMC,
ESC, employees, suppliers, and customers, right? Yeah.
And you from a business perspective, you're like, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're focusing what your employees care about, what your suppliers care about, what your
Customers
customers
care
care
about.
about.
Yeah.
And most of them are going to align with a lot of that. And it's
Yes.
just it's a more tangible framework to look at, because a lot of the negative feedback that ESG is getting back is like the investment, what we were talking earlier about. Because when you look at the ESG, they're lumping the pretenders with the contenders, and when you look at the returns, they're probably not that good because people are just doing it on paper. And the good companies, regardless, are probably, like you stated, already doing that. And I
Yeah.
like it. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to make a quick point there, because I think that the reason why we came up with the ESC acronym, employee suppliers customers, that we think a lot of ESG ratings agencies in the past have said to us, well, we cover those within our current framework. And we just didn't think they were doing a very good job of covering those. But so we think that the ESG framework, because of its environmental pedigree, was really designed more for risk avoidance as opposed to driving performance, right? There are certain companies that understand how to use it to drive performance, but if all you really care about doing is achieving, checking off the boxes for the ratings agencies, you're probably not thinking about how to use ESG or ESC, and we say ESC, but you're probably not thinking about how to use ESG to drive performance. But if you think about it, like, what is my organization here attempting to do, and how might I be able to do it better by focusing on something other than just creating returns for shareholders, right? That's when you sort of get deeper into ESG and start thinking about exactly how each one of those components drives performance. So I think in the investment world, you have a little bit of both of those, right? You have some investors that are just using some data they get from ratings agencies as an overlay to things that they do. They're not really serious about understanding the underlying health of the businesses, right? And that's where I think you get that sort of dichotomy you alluded to.
Yeah, and kind of taking a couple points back where you said ESG is a subset of stakeholders. I think I want to touch upon the stakeholders a bit because I find it really valuable, and you can't talk about it. If you really want to talk about true value of ESG, you talk about stakeholders. Because, as you said, part of the stakeholders are the employees, suppliers, and customers. That's not all the stakeholders there are, but those are three of the major ones.
Right.
And so if if you're not considering those stakeholders and looking at that, you don't, if you just do ESG without considering that component or that major factor, then you're just doing something that you internally want to do, and that doesn't really accomplish anything. Correct.
Yeah, look, I think
What
that
are your thoughts on
all of this, all of the, any analysis that you're doing about, about your business, about your organization, should be done through the lens of how does it create value for stakeholders, right?
that?
If you do that, all of this starts to make more sense, right? And you find new paths to creating value, right? If you one of the pushbacks, and I still think it's political, but the reason why you get the ESG pushback is that because the people who are pushing back at that still believe that the only purpose of a business is to create value for shareholders. So if they look at ESG through a shareholder value lens only, right, what will they find? They'll find trade-offs, right? But if you look at, and if you look at your organization writ large through a shareholder value lens only, the only thing that you can find is trade-offs, because that's the fundamental foundation of the shareholder model. It's that I'm operating this business to create value for shareholders. So anything that I do where I spend anywhere else if it doesn't, that's money that the shareholders could have gotten that they aren't. Right. So the job of the management of those organizations is to only pay as as much as I need to get people to come to work and be no more than that. Right. So all of those things, where how you deal with all those other stakeholders, it's all a trade-off for shareholders. But when you start to look at your organization through a stakeholder model, you find new ways to create value. So you understand that if that paying employees more is not a trade-off between paying shareholders less, right? It's a way actually to drive more performance in the organization and therefore create a bigger pie for everyone, right? So I think the stakeholder perspective is more, the shareholder perspective comes from a scarcity mindset, and the stakeholder perspective comes from an abundance mindset, right? So I think that if, no matter whether you're looking through the, ESG through that lens or ESC through that lens, whatever you're doing, if you look at if you start to analyze how might we think about this as it relates to our company, if you look at it through a shareholder lens, you're going to find trade-offs, right? And it's going to be us versus them. If you look at through a stakeholder lens, you're going to say there's more here than meets the eye. We can create more. We can be more abundant, right? If we do things that other people aren't doing with respect to ESG, ESC, all of our stakeholders. So I think that there's a fundamental shift that has to take place in order for you to get to understand how to analyze the potential activities or initiatives that you might do under an ESG framework, and how that creates future value, right? So you have to have that shift first. You have to have the mindset shift first, and then once you have the mindset shift, you start just identifying and recognizing places to create greater value, right? But if you're still looking at this through a shareholder lens, the only thing you can possibly understand is trade-offs.
Right?
That's true. And I believe so. Let's take a little, because you're talking a little bit changing mindsets, right?
Yeah.
And you work with a lot of startups, as from a startup that went through it. One of the things that's hard to like when you look at the employee aspect of it, right? Like paying
Yeah.
people as much as you can just to get them to come in and not leave. That's the shareholder mindset. How does
Right.
that change, and how do you change that mindset? Because I talk to a lot of startups, and they always have this gumption and like, oh, we want to do the best for our people, and we want to do what's right. But that's really vague on like what's right, what's best for your people. And then as you develop these startups, you're developing what, 20 to 40 startups every 3 to 4 months?
Yeah. Yeah.
Months?
Roughly.
Like,
Yeah. Roughly. Yeah.
yeah. And so how are you changing their, like, what are your steps that you're helping, and when do you suggest some of these startups go from, okay, they have this vague approach about how to do right by their people, to, okay, creating the right steps for, or at least in your mind, the step that they need to take so that the people that come through their doors, albeit virtual doors,
Yeah.
uh, are being taken care of.
Well, look, I think that you hit on something when you talked about mindset, shifting the mindset, because we understand that this is not that everyone gets everything they want all the time, right? That's not what the stakeholder model says. The stakeholder model says we're going to do our best to create a mutual exchange of value amongst all our stakeholders. And sometimes there's still trade-offs, right? But I think that what happens in the stakeholder model, if you approach the business from this idea that our job is to create a mutual exchange of value from that mindset, right? First of all, you'll find ways to do that. And then, at different stages of the business, it requires you to think about that in different ways, right? Or you think at the earliest stage with, startups that come through our program, we just want them to have that in their mind, right? So as they grow, they can find opportunities to create a mutual exchange of value. When you're just getting this on day one, it's all hands on deck. We work harder than we want to. We get paid less than we need. Everybody knows this, right? It's just the way it is, right? We have limited resources. The biggest resource we have is time, so we have to leverage that. So everybody understands that, and everyone who gets in the startup world understands that. But I think that if we get people to think about, how do we create an environment where people feel cared for, even if we aren't able to pay them a lot of money. I give you an example. This year, and I didn't think of this, Eliza, who was our chief of staff, came to me and she said, we had just finished a cohort. Everyone was working hard, so we're in the same thing. We're a startup as well, right? So everyone works harder than they want to and gets paid less than they need. And, it's more work and less money and all of those sorts of things. But she said to me, she goes, why have you thought about this? And this is a creative thinking, right? That when you take off the shareholder blinders, she said, I think we should just give everyone the last, week of August off. We don't get a lot of work done. People on vacation, we're scrambling. It's hot. Let's just give everyone, some time to rejuvenate, right? And we were really serious about it. And what did it cost us? Did it really cost us anything? Not really, right? Everyone's on salary, so we're paying them no matter what, right? And there were things that we could say, look, we're going to take this last week off. So there's some really critical things. Let's all focus on getting those critical things done before next Friday. And then after that, put down your phones, turn off your computers, take some time to rejuvenate. So just having that perspective and that mindset that we have to care more, right? Allowed us to come up with a way to give people some time to themselves, some time to get, we call it, better you time, right? The time to do whatever they want that they needed to do for themselves, to come back, energized, re-energized, and ready to start in the fall. It didn't cost us a lot of money, right? In terms of incremental costs, it cost us nothing, right? Because everyone was excited to have that time. Everyone worked a little bit harder the week before to get the critical things done, and then they were ready to hit the ground running. So I just think that mindset shift, right, that allows you. That's a really easy one to identify, but allows you to find ways to create value, right? That are going to drive the organization forward. That otherwise, that if we were like, nope, that's a week when no one's working. So if we thought about that as we're paying people for doing nothing, we wouldn't have done it. But we thought about that as, look, we're paying people anyway, and we need these people to be completely, ready to go and on our side, and let's give them some time to get ready to do that. So that's just it's a little thing in the mindset shift, right?
I think that's extremely valuable when you look at the people that work for you. What are they going to? It's really hard to capture what is that ROI of getting people a week off, right? It costs you X amount, and what is your return on that? Like you got the things done that you need to get done. And I think that sometimes that, like, I'll be honest, when sometimes, like, especially I have to look at things as an ROI when I'm going to make some type of investment or when money's involved.
Yeah.
But when you look at some maybe those intangibles, right? How are you going to actually, and how would you suggest to companies that not everything, like, how do you consider, it's kind of hard to think about in my mind right now. It's how do you look at that as an ROI, right? Because like you stated, we didn't look at this as if the amount of money we spent was negligible. That wasn't the value that we looked at. We wanted to give people that me time, that freedom, that to just decompress. So how do you? I know even for myself, like we want to give people time off, and I always go like I look at, I consider some factors, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But how do you tell and work with the startups? Because one of the things you said, the most important thing that startups have is time.
Right.
And Graham, you're not advocating, hey, everybody just get time off, but it is a valuable thing because you can take some time off and just shut the computers off, and it's not part of your vacation days. You're just like, hey, we're just coming 1 minute. We're doing this because we care.
Right. Yeah. Look, I mean, I sort of guess the question is, how do we think about that?
From an
Um,
ROI perspective, or do you even consider the ROI and just go, look, we're your people, we care. I'm tired. I assume you're all tired.
yeah, I don't know. I guess the way I think about it is, I mean, we all know that we've got critical activities that we have to do to be successful. And we all know what those are. And we try to be very clear about what those are and when they need to be done, all that sort of thing. Right. And then, it's a matter of what's the best way for us to get all that done. Sometimes the best way for us to get it all done is to double time it, right? You got to work overtime, you got to work at night. And sometimes the best way to get it done is, and I'm sure that you experience this on your own. Sometimes, the best way for me to get something done is to say, you know what, I need to step away from this for a while, right? Because I'm too deep into it, right? So I think it's just sort of saying, what are the key things that we need to execute upon, right? And what's the best way for them? When do they need to be done? And what's the best way to get them done? And can we hold each other accountable? And if we can, then the rest of that stuff will take care of itself, right? So what's the ROI of us giving people a week off? Well, if they come back and they're more motivated and they're more, they're not burnt out, right? And they're more apt to get things done quicker, because they had a little bit of time to themselves and they got to take care of some things that they've been meaning to do but hadn't had a chance to do, that are getting in the way of them getting to work, all of those sorts of things, right? So you have to think of ROI from a more holistic perspective, or more, inclusive perspective. It's not just, you do this one thing and it returns this, right? That's the shareholder model. So you work an hour and it returns, 2x, right? Well, that's, but there are other ways to get there to that 2x, right? There are plenty of different paths. We always say there's plenty of different paths to creating value. When you take off the shareholder blinders, you find new paths of creating value. So we determined that one path to creating value for us was everyone take a week off. That was a path to creating value that we might not have access to if we were only thinking about the trade-off between an hour work and returns for shareholders. We're actually thinking about the whole system in return for shareholders, right? Ed, you met Ed Freeman at UVA, right? And Ed always says, look, even if you don't believe that, if the only thing that matters to you is making more money, if that's the only thing that matters to you, you should probably do what we say anyway, because it'll actually lead to making more money, we believe, right? So even if you don't care, hoot about employees, you should actually probably treat them the way that we suggest, because it'll make them work harder, make them more productive, and you make more money, right? So that's the thing. It's like I was to another podcast once with Kara Swisher, the Pivot podcast, and she had a woman on there who had worked for Amazon, and they asked a question about, do companies owe employees anything other than fair pay, safe place to work, and if they offer benefits or whatever? Do companies owe them anything else, right? And I think that the answer to that is no. You don't owe me. Companies don't owe us anything else, but it's really stupid not to do the extra thing, because the extra thing is what makes us more competitive, right? So no, you don't owe it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but it's really dumb. It's dumb not to, right?
I agree, and even in that aspect, when you're trying to bring people on, right, and the people in your organization can speak highly about it, because if they start with you, because maybe they don't know, some of those intangibles aren't there, but they don't know about them, because you're not going to advertise, hey, every year we're just going to take a week off. It just kind of happens sporadically. It's a random bonus, but when they start working in your organization,
people in your organization will talk to each other and they'll say,
Right.
oh yeah, like it was like, don't worry that you're working tough because these things happen. We're going, we will, something nice will happen for us because of this. Because we work in an organization that just doesn't look at us as a number,
Right.
right? They look at us as human beings. I think that's incredibly valuable as, because most of the people we talk to are startups and I think they sometimes do worry about that. And what you're really talking about is valuable because you don't have to just look at, okay, you're paying someone 40 hours a week. And then
Yeah.
yeah, you can give them time off, you can give them whatever benefits, dental health, but there's more to that because if you want to attract people and you want people to stay, because one of the number one things that I get when companies come to us and say, I want to, they tell me I want someone to stay at my company longer than 1 year. I go,
Hmm.
what a place we're in when companies just want people to stay longer than 1 year, right? Like, I think like staying over, like if you stay at a company for 5 years, that's like the equivalent of in the 70s, like 30 years, like
Yeah.
it feels
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, and yeah, things might look different, but I go, if you look at your employees, like as you said, and you incorporate all these different aspects, what are you providing to the people that work at your company a certain value so that they want to stay more than 1 year? And the thing that you're providing, which is just the standard, you don't owe them, like you said, you don't owe more than that. But if you want people to stay long, you want to attract better people to also come to your company. It's pretty dumb not to think about those things.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Look, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody wants, I mean, I think that as leaders in organizations, what I know certainly what I want from the people, my colleagues, is I want them to give me discretionary effort, right? I want them to go above and beyond. I want them to do the things that whatever it takes to get the job done, right? And there's this, the whole thing with quiet quitting, right? It's like I pay you for a job, and people are like, yeah, you pay me for a job, and that's all I'm going to do. All right, that's one way to think about the world. It certainly is, right?
Mhm.
You pay me to be here from 9 to 5. You don't owe me anymore, and I don't owe you anymore, right?
Mhm.
I just don't want to live in that world, right? I want us to sort of to live in a world where we're both, on both sides of that equation, that we're trying to overachieve, we're trying to do better, we're trying to, to do the absolute positive best that we can for each other, right? So I'm trying to do the best that I can for my employees, and I want them to do the best that they can for the organization. That's the world I want to live in. And people, we tell people this all the time. If you don't operate with a stakeholder mindset, you're still there's a possibility, if not even a probability, that you could be successful, right? So you can live in that world where it's all about shareholders. I don't owe you anything, you don't owe me anything. You can live in that world, right? I'm only going to pay you enough so you won't quit, and I know you're only going to work hard enough so I won't fire you, right? um, okay, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's just not a world I want to live in, right? We tell people this all
Yeah.
the time. You can make a choice. That's why we say this is a fork in the road. You can make a decision. You can live in that world, or you can live in another world that's a lot more fun, that's a lot more happy, a lot more joyous, that everyone does their best. We take care of each other. We can live in that world too, right? And
Yeah.
we think that the possibility, the potential of our performance is better in the other world. That's just what I believe. Some people don't believe that. That's okay. Even if you don't, you still get to decide which world you want to live in.
It's true. You definitely can choose that. I will give you an anecdote, a personal one from Awana. Uh, we I think we definitely chose the fork where we enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
We enjoy it, and they enjoy coming because I've also tried to create it so they have that critical
the flexibility and freedom to think critically.
Yep.
And they honestly, I try to encourage also the people to meet outside without, I don't have to always be part of the conversation. I don't always have to be part of every decision making. I don't have to be part of all the company-wide activities, well, company-wide, but internal-wide activities where people just engage. We have people, so we have people in Ecuador, and they go out, they've actually started their own they took over a group where they're encouraging startups in Cuenca to engage and meet up once a week. I have people in Quito that are asking me, "Hey, Calvin, I'd really like to go to this event, or can we do this sponsor this event? It has to do with this." I have people in Guayaquil, the same thing. They're all doing these things because they believe in what we do. And could I have just, I think there was at a point where we hit a point in the company where we were just thinking of, okay, got to pay these people, we got to move to the next step. But now we're definitely in a mode where people are giving more. And I'm trying to, I have my assistant, she's always telling me, like, Calvin, what do you think about doing? Can we do this for the people? And I go, how can I deliver more value to everybody? And I think
Yep.
that alone is getting it. I have this, I see it in the people that are working that they're excited, they're engaged more than they are now, more probably a year or two ago. So it's
Yep.
really a testament to what you're saying. And I do believe it's when you change that mindset, you change things for the better for the company, and things will become more successful.
Yeah. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So what's happening next with CVL right now?
So we're in pitch prep on cohort 10. Demo day is December the 6th here in Baltimore. So you've been through it, so you know where we are. We're hurtling towards the end. We got Olin Douglas, I think, coming in this week to do some finance work with the teams. So we've got twice a week. We have a pitch prep with me and Joe Vallis and Jenny Thompson, who you've
Oh
met.
wow,
Yeah,
yeah,
a
some
number
heavy
of occasions.
hitters.
Yeah, all the heavy hitters. So, yeah, and I think that we're actually launching a call for applications for cohort 11 tomorrow.
Okay.
So, yeah, things are going on, and we've got a lot of things. We're going to be launching a new program in Trenton, New Jersey, here in the States.
Oh, wow.
Conscious
It's
Venture Lab.
expanding now.
We're expanding. We're talking to some folks in DC about another program. So yeah, lots on our plate. Yeah, but it's
And
all exciting though.
yeah, and is this pitch, because when I went through it, we were in the middle of COVID, so everything was virtual. Is it still
No,
virtual or?
we're going live.
Oh wow.
We're going live, with the exception we have one company in Kazakhstan. So
Okay.
he'll probably pitch virtually, but everybody else is going to be on stage here in Baltimore.
Oh my, and are you gonna, well, I hope share the link with me. If you have a live stream, I'll definitely stop in and share that with anybody that comes through my community.
Yeah, well, I'll get Mariana to send you. We will definitely be doing a live stream, so I'll get her to send it to you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely know you have some good companies. Like we had a webinar not too long ago, and Balance. Uh,
Yep,
I think it
balance.io.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool company. What type of companies I mean, now are you focusing on bringing into the cohorts?
Well, as you know, we're always focused on ideas that we believe are sort of breaking down barriers to access, which is sort of, right in the wheelhouse of what you guys are doing. So we're still sort of focused on that. Won't be any surprise to anyone. We're getting many more companies that are, both saying they're using AI and machine learning, and actually some more than some of those actually are using AI and machine learning. So that's something that's interesting right now for us. Obviously, with the way things are going in the AI space and the new initiatives and the new technology innovations that are happening, weekly, if not daily, it's hard to keep up. So we're working hard on that. But yeah, lots of still those companies that are looking to break down barriers to access, whether it be hiring and jobs and technology or medicine or mobility and food and all of those issues. But and then looking at trying to make sure that we have a good grasp on how companies are using AI to achieve some of those things. So yeah.
So, quick hot take, since you brought it up on AI. When a company, because I've heard some varying opinions on this. If a company is coming to you and say, "Oh, like," I'll say I considered it, but I'll give you my opinion on it after. But like, if they say they're using AI in their company, what is your initial reaction, and at what point do they break it down from being, I'll put those pretenders and contenders in AI for you?
Yeah. So our initial reaction of late is, we're definitely interested, and we want to understand, right? We understand what's going on, and I think that at what point we start to probably ask more pointed questions than they may have anticipated, because we actually do have a couple of other AI companies that are doing really interesting work. And I think that we're getting a better handle on on what's the value and how are different companies thinking about different business models, thinking about implementing AI. Are they building their own language, large language models? Are they using someone else's? Are they leveraging something on top of ChatGPT or some other platform? So I think that we're starting to dig deeper into that to try and understand what's the real competitive advantage. Do they have their own technology? Have they built their own models? Or are they using someone else's? So it's sort of digging into that a little bit is sort of where we're going. We're not great at it yet. We're getting better. Yeah.
That's a good answer. I think I would have been so eloquent with it. I would say if someone came to me and said they're AI, I'd probably call them that's BS.
Yeah, I know. We've said that in the past too, but
It's
we're
just
saying
new.
we're giving more people the benefit of the doubt these days until we can uncover where it's at.
Yeah, and you're asking the questions. You can't GPT to quite. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
You're asking
All right.
questions to see, okay, are you actually AI, or are you just saying AI? Because
Right.
I mean, you can actually say a lot of it, and you can build it. Because like, I saw a recruitment tool come out the other day, and I go, "Oh, that's what we're doing, just AI, and you're scaling, but you can only scale with certain aspects." I go, "Okay, that the investment doesn't warrant
Yeah.
the product."
Yeah, and then you get the valuations, right? So that's getting a little crazy too, and we're just trying to figure that out as well. Right.
Yeah, good luck there.
Yeah, I
I
know.
think we had a lot of AI hype over the last year, and funds just popping up just for AI. And uh,
Yeah.
it's if you're going to say you're AI, you're going to apply to CVL. Definitely be prepared. You're
Yeah,
going to get some hard questions.
yes. Yeah, and be prepared. And then they're lots of people are justifying, crazy valuations just by saying everyone else is getting them. I guess, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, uh, that that's a bad answer no matter what. Even if
Yeah. Even if I agree with you. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely remember you quizzed me pretty tough on numbers. And if anything, if you're gonna come up with these valuations, come prepared with having your numbers in order, because that's where it really comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, it was a pleasure. We'll
having you here talking. I know we talked, sorry, ESG, there's a lot that went on there, but the bigger picture was stakeholders and the value that when you think about stakeholders and everything there. Um, anything that you'd like to talk about before I end the show?
I'm excited to be on with you. Always great to see you, and happy that you're doing this. I'm looking forward to listening to this one and to others. And as always, if we can, let us know how we can help Awana and the team move forward. We're big supporters, and looking forward to big things out of you guys.
I appreciate it, Jeff. And we'll put the link to apply to the next cohort in the show notes, and any
Awesome.
other link, just send it over, and we'll put that down there if they want to connect with you, who they should connect with, and any application.
Yeah, I'll have Mariana send all that stuff over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Calvin. Good to see you.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in and spending a part of your day with us. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Have questions? Head over to awana.io and ask away.